Hello again. This is my second video that I've decided to make. It's a follow-up to elaborate more and sort of add some more to where I left off really on my first video. I think on my decision to become a MGTOW, as I outlined, was after realising through past relationships that there were shocking similarities within all these relationships, regardless of who the girl was and what they proclaimed to be. As in, I'm not like that, I'm not going to treat you like that, that was terrible, I would never do that to you. This, in hindsight, as mentioned before, is an easy lie to see through. And it's something I've been told since then by girls who obviously want to be in a relationship or get with me at some point. And it's one I've heard way too often. When I talk to other men and I look at what other men are doing in terms of relationships or their views on things, I don't see any hope for some of them, I must admit. I won't lie, it is difficult in the early sort of outset of having that sort of moment when you decide that MGTOW is the best way for you. I think I can put that down to the fact that being with women is essentially like a habit. You know, it becomes a day-to-day part of life depending on the length of your relationship. As mentioned by the MGTOW, it can be an addiction, whether it's just sex. But yeah, the easiest comparison I can make is to it being like a habit. If you've got things you do daily, the person you're used to seeing, that person you're used to being with, and it can make you kind of relapse back to the same way of doing things, and as some would say, going back to the plantation. I think this is true for everyone. A lot of people have had this where they do feel that lack of connection and they find it difficult and they end up repeating the same mistakes that they go through again and again, and I've seen that firsthand with a lot of people I know. Me personally, I've never been much of an extrovert. I don't particularly need many people's company. My friends certainly understand if I don't see them for a good couple of weeks or even longer, that it's not me being an arsehole about the whole situation, it's just the way I am. I will admit in the early days I missed that closeness. I missed all the simple stuff like, I guess, cuddles and all that sort of thing. But then when you look back at the sort of cost of the apparent emotional connection that you do have with a woman, I don't feel it's ever worth it. That's what's kept me on this path. I would say one that's also helped me is I don't have a particularly addictive personality. I used to drink quite heavily in my early years, obviously, and didn't have a problem whatsoever just giving it up one day, and just felt like I didn't really need it, and I didn't miss it. I think the same can be said of a relationship in some ways. I guess a lot of men seek their validation outside of their own knowing. They seek someone else to tell them they mean something, to feel worth something. And to sort of allow them to function properly, knowing they've got a goal outside themselves. Personally, I found the best thing, and I've honestly never found more freedom and more sort of self-worth in the fact that I am self-reliant, and that I only need myself for myself and my son, definitely, for any kind of validation whatsoever. If what I'm doing is right by me and right by my son, I'm honestly not bothered who things offend, whether they think it's right what I do with my life, whether I choose to be on my own. Because that's not something I'm looking for anymore. I don't need outside validation from people. I think obviously it's always nice to have that sort of appreciation from your family. That's a completely different level though. Because looking back on past relationships and women I know and stuff like that, they praise you and want to validate you, because in the long run that betters them for some purpose. I've seen this in my job. People will sweet talk you hoping they get something for free, or get preferential treatment. And I think the greatest self-realisation I had was when I realised that I never wanted anyone's approval. There's only one person's approval I seek in my entire life. And he knows who he is, whether he's old enough to acknowledge it or not, but he knows. I think the core of staying true to MGTOW and developing and growing in yourself is understanding that you hold all the power as to whether you feel validated or not. And I talked to a few blokes who sort of suggesting they'll never go back to that way of life and to being in relationships. And then you see them handing out, phone numbers, and a few weeks later it's all changed. And I hear the same things, this one's different, she's really decent. And inside, obviously, all you want to do is scream at them and just kind of tell them it's not the way. It's not going to happen that way for them. Not suggesting I can profess, to tell the future or any such nonsense, but I think you get to a point when you've had enough life experience that you start to be able to read people very, very well. And I think that overcoming habits in that regard is something that everyone, you can always work on betterment for yourself. You can study, you can make things, you can put your time and your energy and your effort and your money into yourself, into your child, just to make sure that everything you're doing is for your personal growth. I don't think at any point any man should have to seek validation or any sort of, a metaphorical pat on the back from a woman for the things he's doing. I think as a man I always prided myself in standing strong and achieving things by myself. And at the time I thought I needed validation, from your girlfriend or your partner. And you realise that validation from them is just empty words. So the best way I think to carry on with breaking a habit is to break out of those behaviours that you had when you were in that place. And start to focus on all the things that you could only hope and dream of doing, when you were with that person that you can finally achieve because you've got nothing holding you back anymore. And I think that's a first good step to producing the sort of life free from the shaming, free from the guilt trips, free from all the sort of negative aspects that women bring to the table in these essentially toxic relationships. I think working on the self and making yourself happy is the only sort of true measure of everything you need to be. And I think that's what I've come to realise personally. I don't need validation from a woman ever in my life to make me realise how strong and great I can be. I think it's good when you can look back and you can see where you've got to in your own life. And remember, it's baby steps. I think it's baby steps for sure. It definitely is. But see, little thing, I take every little thing as an achievement of things that I could never do when I was being held back and shamed and put down. And I think that's the only way you can move forward. Is just to have faith and confidence in my own abilities. I'm sorry if I've rambled. I hope you get the general gist of what I'm trying to say, and thank you for listening.